Hello and welcome to Season 5, Episode 6 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I'm Mark Bishop.
We are, of course, reading Austin Freeman's Tolkien Dogmatics, Theology Through Mythology with the Maker of Middle-earth. This time, Chapter 5, talking about angels and how Tolkien talks about angels in his works. And it is important to mention, for the first time in podcast history, one of the authors of the books has followed us on Twitter. Austin Freeman now follows our official Unlimited Opinions Twitter account, which is, of course, ULMTD Opinions on Twitter. One of our, 10 or so followers is the author of this book himself.
I wonder if he's going to try to get us for copyright infringement or something. He's going to sue us.
Well, it's a good thing you're a lawyer. So, Austin Freeman, if you're listening, my dad is a lawyer. Yeah, and I hope that scares you away.
Yeah, I don't want to. That's probably federal court. I don't like federal court.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a whole different nightmare.
Well, we'll see if
I shouldn't have said that.
No,
for sure going to sue me in federal court.
He's going to think he can get us for sure. You screwed it.
Well, what I lack in competence, I make up for in aggression.
There you go. That's great. We're also in person today. I'm in town because yesterday was Record Store Day, National Record Store Day, April 22nd. Big holiday. Had to come home and get 17 albums, bringing my total up to 621 total vinyl records that I have collected throughout the years.
And 620 of them are bought by me?
Not quite. Probably 400 or so over the years. But a good chunk I've bought myself.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. Do you want to just jump right into things, or do you want to talk
else?
A little bit more? I don't know. Maybe you had some other comments about our Twitter or about Austin Freeman. Just insult him,
Well,
if we know he's listening.
Well, if we're going to talk about... No, I mean, I can get to insults later when we get to the content of the book. But
I'm so sorry, Mr. Freeman, or Dr. Freeman, I guess.
Doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Freeman. We have to be respectful. Yes.
Does he cure cancer or something? Is that kind of doctor, or is he a Joe Biden fake doctor type doctor?
So I like that.
I'm a doctor. I'm a Juris Doctor. So are you going to start calling me doctor?
I like that now that we have some sort of confirmation that he knows that we exist. You've just decided to go real hard on just insulting this poor man whose book that we are reading.
I didn't insult him. He's not a doctor. Why do we insist on calling PhDs doctors? He's not a doctor. A doctor in the United States is a medical doctor. Mm-hmm. You know why we call them doctor? Because it means something valuable. Mm-hmm. Not that having a PhD is not valuable, but it's not nearly as valuable as an MD. Mm. They're not as useful. It's like if somebody's having an episode on a plane, they say, "Oh, we need a doctor. Is there a doctor on the plane?" "Oh, I have a PhD in Tolkien literature." Sit down. Anywho.
Yes, I'm very sorry, Austin Freeman, if you are listening. I am very sorry for his
believe that he would agree with me.
Maybe
100%.
If you do agree with us, you can DM us on Twitter.
Look at his book.
Yes.
It doesn't say Dr. Austin Freeman as the author. If he was some, a person that wanted to throw around, or would say
it
Austin
does say
Freeman,
on the back,
PhD,
however.
What?
Austin M. Freeman, in parentheses, PhD, Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, is a lecturer at Houston Baptist University and a classical school teacher.
In parentheticals.
Yes.
But it doesn't say Dr. Austin Freeman.
True.
So you are putting that upon him.
I'm very sorry.
He is not claiming that title.
Austin Freeman, if you're listening, clear this up for us. Tweet at us and let us know at ULMTD Opinions.
Well, I will say this as part of our saga, or our journey yesterday for Record Store Day. We were going to go to 2 more than we visited. We like to go on a trip of various vinyl record stores in the St. Louis region. Mm-hmm. And this time, for the first time, we had your younger brother, Elijah, go along with us. So that was different.
Yes.
And we could not go to the one store I've gone to every Record Store Day, which is Vintage Vinyl, because the roads were closed and there was a giant pot festival in honor of 420. And I have to say that I would have never imagined that there would be a city-sponsored shutdown of the roads, even in U City, to honor the consumption and distribution of marijuana. What a pointless spectacle, and I kind of regret that we didn't make an effort to stop and walk, I guess, the 2 miles that we'd have to walk to go to this stupid pot festival that kept us from our destination. And then what really made me angry is that we only got to see the last song at the last stop of one of my favorite groups, which is now a solo act called Super Fun Yeah Yeah Rocket Ship.
Yes.
And if anybody actually listens to this, you should go onto YouTube and check out the videos for Super Fun Yeah Yeah Rocket Ship. I think he was better as a duo, and I saw him live at Euclid Records years ago. Very entertaining.
Was that just a complete non sequitur? Did you just want to rant about the Weed Festival? I'm trying to figure out.
You brought up Record Store Day.
Yeah, like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the ridiculous weed shutdown of the University City Loop.
Yes.
And then also fit in a reference to Super Fun Yeah Yeah Rocket Ship.
That's fair.
That guy is brilliant. I mean,
very
the
funny.
one song that you saw,
Horse Train,
which was Horse Train, he had a giant inflatable horse, and he sang the song Horse Train. And but we missed the Crab Walk song. There's another song that's really good. I forget the name.
Well, we caught him right as he was like jumping over two people in the
Oh
audience.
yeah, he does that every time.
Does he? Oh,
Yes.
that doesn't surprise
me. Yes.
Yes.
I had forgotten about that part of the show. And he's been doing this for years. I mean, years. Because it was pre-COVID that I saw him live, and he did it at Euclid Records.
He's putting out an album. Apparently, we found out.
Well, I'm going to buy it.
I know you are.
Yes.
All right. We should actually get into the content of this chapter. We've been talking for like 6 minutes now about nothing.
Speaking of angels, being like an angel, the singer of Super Fun Yeah Yeah Rocket Ship, he is an angelic figure.
He's an angelic being sent down to Earth. I don't know about
our
that
topic today is Tolkien's theory on angels, and somehow the author has figured out a way to write 30 pages on theories of angels within Tolkien's writings. But I mean, it was I was surprised by the length.
Yeah, I really like this chapter. Surprise!
Really?
Yeah, really? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you have endorsed every chapter. I'm waiting for a dud.
I don't think there will be. I really like this book, and I think I will enjoy every chapter.
So again, we're going to talk about the author's summary and citations to Tolkien's theory on the subject of angels, and then I'm going to ask you about your theories about angels. So there's kind of an introductory section about what are angels? How does Tolkien define them? And what are they? Philosophically or religiously? And I think we already talked about this, or he referenced it. They certainly referenced it earlier in the book. I think we talked about it. Is that Tolkien believes that he had a mystical experience in 1944, which was, he believes, I guess, was it a guardian angel? Did he ever specify that he thought it was? But it was basically a bright light of God type situation, millions of glittering notes suspended within it. And he really believes that he had this interaction with an angel, and the view is that the angel is God's attention personified, which I never heard that theory before. I don't really know much about
angels
angelic theory.
Aren't really something that's
philosophy.
discussed a lot in like modern Catholicism. Even though I think we're one of the only Christian denominations to really strongly believe in angels. Like I'm sure some of the other Protestants do, like the Lutherans, and probably some of the more charismatic denominations. But we're, I think, the ones who give angels the biggest importance out of all the Christian denominations. Maybe Orthodox as well. But
it's kind of embarrassing to talk about it.
It is.
He's like, oh, do you really believe
especially
that,
in recent
Satan?
times. Yeah.
I'm more apt to believe in Satan than any other angels, and then maybe Satan's something of not an angel. But I know the Catholic theology is that he is an angel, but just kind of intuitively, just kind of like emotionally or something. I have a hard time with the angel concept, but I haven't really thought about it much.
Yeah.
And I do have a Saint Michael, the famous statue in my office. Putting his foot on Satan's neck and about to drive a sword into his head, just because it's cool. It's also a reminder you always have to fight against evil. But of course, I do agree that the hardest fight is the evil within you. Anywho, moving right along to the angels stuff. So as an introductory discussion of it, the Tolkien believes that angels can assist you, kind of guide you, kind of give information to you, and that angels, guardian angels, partake in almost really a spiritual war on behalf of God's creatures. They fight for you, but I don't think he really says they do too much direct intervention, more of kind of like a force trying to guide you towards the right path, I guess. Would you agree with that's the summary that he gives it? And I'm not familiar at all with St. Thomas and his metaphysical theories with regard to angels and them being a pure spirit, kind of embodiment of that kind of pure spirit and goodness. Do you know anything about that? I have not studied that at all.
Not too much. I know that, and I think he gets into it a little bit later, but I know I think this also comes from St. Thomas Aquinas. But the idea that, humans are both spirit and like flesh and material, but of course angels are only spirit. And so they're like, I forget how exactly he relates it, but some form of, part of God's spirit directly, and they're not like physical beings. And so there's all kinds of discussions on whether or not they have free will and stuff, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well.
And of course, Tolkien got into all sorts of details about different types of angelic creatures. And so there's a question of whether or not, okay, is this really his philosophy, or is this just his creativity? In the fiction subjects, with the Valar and the Maiar and all these other characters that he created, is it really his religious beliefs? Is it mirrored? It probably is. I don't know if there's anything directly that they could say this is kind of like a fictionalized version of his beliefs, but it certainly seems very close, based upon his writings and stuff. So, are we ready to get into what Tolkien wrote about them? Absolutely. Starting with the Valar and the Divine Council. And first mentioning, the author mentions that there are many passages of Scripture that speak of an assembly of powerful beings who serve as God's court. And when it was helpful that he had all these citations to Job and Psalms, and it's like, God, there really are a lot of references to angels.
Well, especially in the Old Testament, too.
And of course, we're Catholics, so we don't read the Bible. Having said that, I'm trying to plow through Revelations now, as time permits.
Lots of angels in that one.
That's true. A lot of visions. Like I had a vision, and then there's the. Is basically the four horsemen, right?
Of the apocalypse,
The black, green, gray, and red. I don't think I got the order right. There's four colors, and there's like a 60s song. Starts with a girl reading a poem. You know the song?
I have no idea.
I've heard it 3 times in like the last 10 days. I haven't heard it in years.
The end times are near. I don't know what to tell you.
God's trying to tell me they ain't my guardian angel is. But I'm trying to get a playlist going for, hey, I'm over here. Maybe you should listen to me once in a while.
There you go.
And then there's the theory that is discussed, I'm just going to skip to it, about whether angels have gender. I guess the theory is they don't have gender because they don't have bodies, but if they became embodied, they would have gender based upon their temperament. So if they're if they're shrill, then they're women. I don't know.
Well, that's actually what? We'll get back to that a little bit later, or we could just talk about it now, the idea of angelic gender. But we mentioned that last time, where like a human soul is inherently of one gender. That's what we're talking about.
Correct.
The soul matches the body, essentially. Right. And so when you have that same concept applies to angels,
right.
If they were to clothe themselves in a body, then the body would have to match. Yeah. He brought that up, Austin Freeman did, when I watched the Babylon Bee interview with him a while back before we started doing the podcast. And that was one of the questions, is like a lot of the trans activists point to, well, there's like a passage in there that says, the Valar clothed themselves in bodies and they can change at will. And, they go on and on about how that proves that Tolkien believed in like transgender ideology and things like that, because you could just change to be whatever you want. And of course, Austin Freeman like demolishes that, because no, they don't just change to be whatever they want. They have like a body that is suitable for them, and it matches their soul, it matches their spirit. And that you never see Yavanna, one of the female Valar, ever like dressing as a man. Essentially, she's always a woman.
Right. And all through human history, there were men that dressed as women and women that dressed as men, and those are transvestites. So I don't know where we seem to have lost that word in our vocabulary. I guess maybe is that transphobic now?
Maybe. I don't think anybody uses that word. Well, anybody's supposed to use that word, I should say.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know.
Because it's just somebody wearing the costume of the opposite. This is all costumes. If gender is just a construct, then why are you wearing women's clothes?
Yeah.
Why do you have to wear the clothes? I can kind of theoretically understand the surgeries and the mutilation and all that stuff, or the drugs. I don't understand the clothes because the clothes are such a social construct.
Yeah.
Complete and total fabrication. I mean, obviously there's some practical realities because, like with the bra and stuff like that. But anyway, so I'm going down a different path. But
Yes.
of course, it's just all a bunch of absurdities now, and there'll be like a whiplash-like effect soon enough, returning us to some sense of normalcy. Whether that will be violent or peaceful, we don't know yet, but it will happen soon.
Sounded like a threat.
No, I'm not going to be violent. No, I'm just saying, society. You can only have people asserting such a blatant falsehood for so long, and then trying to push it down on children for so long before guys, all the guys I know are like, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about sports. I want to talk about work. I want to talk about family. I want to talk about some freaking California doing something, or this guy dressing up as a girl. Leave me alone. And that's been the theme for Midwestern normal dudes for forever.
Yeah.
And at some point when you start pushing it into their schools and into their work, which with all this DEI training and stuff, it's like we're getting to the point where all the guys who don't want to get involved are going to be like, okay, all right, we're going to have to get involved. And then they're going to solve it one way or the other. And that's where it becomes, I think, dangerous, because the vast majority of guys, I'm just speak for the guys, we don't want to mess with it. We don't want to, like there's a small percentage of shrilly type men and women that are like, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. And most guys are like, whatever, I just want to go back to the line. I just want to go back to work. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it works, but they're getting more and more aggressive. And at some point, we're all just going to stand up and we're going to say, no more. You are out. You and you and you. And thankfully, they're all identifying themselves with the blue hair because we all know who they are. You can see them as they approach. And so we're able to say, okay, I'm not going to discuss anything with you.
Yeah.
Have a nice day. But anyway, so moving right along to angels. Where was I at? Oh, yeah. So, where was I?
We're talking powerful about beings, God's court, and then into that Tolkien modeled his own beings off of that idea. Of
correct.
God's court.
And then like this choir thing, like this whole assembly, so to speak. And so we've got this Valar and the Divine Council, and they have this choir that creates stuff, and then almost kind of modeling these types of angels as the mythological gods, kind of assigning them some sort of characteristics similar to the gods of old, as far as either acts of nature or certain types of character flaws, that type of thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting that, and do you agree with that? That his writings are kind of similar to those Greek god type issues.
I used to be like more of the opinion that no, these are like purely pagan gods and there's nothing more to it. Because I used to like not want to, call the Valar and the Maiar like angels, because I didn't think that was appropriate because it's, fictional world and that sort of stuff. But the more I think about it, I think the more directly it is that they are specifically angels subservient to a god, and not, tiers of gods themselves, right? Because they have their limits and they have, their own essentially assigned plan in a way, but they are modeled in such a way after pagan gods. And I think it's kind of, this is kind of speaking without too much evidence, but I feel like based on what
that's all I do. But go ahead.
Well, of course. But I feel like just based on this chapter in particular, it seems like that's almost Tolkien's theory about why we have like pagan gods in the first place, is that, angels did appear to people and tried to guide them. Similar things to what I've said as well. Angels did appear to people and try to guide them towards God, and they took that to mean, oh, you yourself are God, and you represent this thing, and then we build up a pantheon around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I used to think that there were more references to angels and intervention and miracles to try to guide us on a path, and we're so far down that path we don't need that anymore. I think because we're more knowledgeable of the world, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that I believe that anymore, but I think there's some consistency that you'd have those miracles and those prophets and all that leading up to Jesus, and then he let everybody know, hey, this is the way, And then now everybody's on notice, so maybe you don't have to have those interventions anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that makes more sense to me because I don't think the world is any more moral after having Jesus visited us than it was before. Perhaps it is, I guess. But anyway, it's. I guess you'd have to have a pretty effective scorecard to be able to decide.
That is true.
Now, there have been improvements. Anyway, so the Valar and do you say that Maiar? M-A-I-A-R.
Yes.
And those are types of Tolkien-created angels.
So just to get this out of the way before, I'm
Yes.
sure you'll ask this later, you have the Ainur, which is the term for both the Valar and the Maiar together. So any of these angelic beings, Valar are a type of Ainur, Maiar are a type of Ainur, Valar are the higher type of Ainur, Maiar are the lower type of Ainur. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so there is an angelic hierarchy.
Yes.
Even within those categories, too, according to the author who's describing Tolkien's views and creations. And before reading this, I'm sure you told me, I never considered Gandalf to be an angelic figure.
Yes. Well, he is one of the Maiar. That is his race himself. He is one of the Maiar.
And that is a type of angel.
Yes.
Or
that is the lower
figure.
rank, yes.
How many of them are there?
Countless.
How many can you fit?
5 were sent to Middle Earth as wizards.
Yes.
So those are the Istari, the messengers, I think is what that word
Now
means.
we've got the Saruman, and we've got Gandalf. We've got the guy with the bird poop hat.
Yeah, some of the worst things from the Hobbit movies is they gave Radagast bird poop in his head.
Radagast character, and then there's the other two that are not
two
referenced
blue
in the
wizards,
movies.
Alatar and Polando.
And what do you
never
mean
come
by
in Lord of the
blue
Rings.
wizards? Are they colored blue or are they sad?
They are colored blue in a way. Tolkien never really describes what the colors mean. So you have Saruman the White, who's the head of the Order until, all of the stuff that happens in Lord of the Rings. You have Gandalf the Gray,
He wears a
Radagast
gray
the Brown.
coat, and he wears a brown coat. Okay.
Yes, and he wears a brown coat. And they're they symbolize, different races. Like Saruman was supposed to be, real in tune with the elves. And that's who he's supposed to be, diving into, the lore and the history of the world and stuff. And then he mentions later Gandalf was supposed to be, kind of the angel for men in a way, guiding them forward.
Including
Radagast,
the hobbits.
Yes, including the hobbits. And Radagast is nature is kind of what people assume. We don't really know about the blue wizards because they don't really play a role in the Lord of the Rings.
I have a theory, and it's based on no fact.
Okay, let's hear it. Like most of yours.
One blue wizard for the sea and the creatures therein, and one blue wizard for the sky and the creatures that fly in the sky.
I don't hate that idea. Yes. I kind of like it.
Because what else would you have?
Well, I guess you could have one for dwarves.
No, they wouldn't have one because they were created by the other angel type figure.
You just out Tolkien knowledged me.
Yes,
that's,
I did.
That's good.
Because,
that's good. That's a good explanation.
Yeah, because you wouldn't have a wizard for them because they're kind of like this sub-creation.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea.
You're welcome. So, and then, so I have this one comment underlined, and there's a line in here on page 129. Tolkien's division of angels between Valar and Maiar is well known and will be discussed below. And I wrote next to it, by whom? Who knows this?
I know this. Of course I do.
Why would you ever write that sentence? Tolkien's division of angels between Valar.
We better see that changed in the second edition. Austin Freeman. We need to see that changed.
It should be well known to Tolkien aficionados or something.
To nerds.
Yes.
Just to clarify, to nerds.
Now, again, we have to say that this book is obviously written for Tolkien nerds. Yes. We're expecting no one else to pick up the book. Sorry. To the author.
I've recommended it to all my friends. I don't know what you're talking about.
And how many have started reading it?
Zero.
That's right.
I'm very sorry, Mr. Freeman.
We're getting way into the weeds in this book. It's not just about. It's not reading Tolkien.
Yeah.
It's not reading about Tolkien.
Yes.
It's not a biography of Tolkien. It's not even a summary of his books. It's not like Cliff Notes. It is a discussion of his beliefs, and then I guess some commentary. Not a lot of commentary, actually. It's really just a discussion.
Are you just now realizing this? We are 5 chapters in.
Well, I'm just explaining that to our listeners. Now 5 chapters in, and we're just trying to confirm that that's what this book is. We're not doing a good job of selling it.
I think I am. I really like this book. I think everybody should read it if you have any interest in Tolkien.
Everybody should read it.
Everybody should read it. I really enjoy it. I've loved every chapter, as I've said.
So where was I at? Oh yeah, so there's a discussion of this hierarchy, and that all creation has the same level of being. Mm-hmm. All sentient beings, according to Tolkien's writings, whether tree, man, or angel, but they may have different capacities or different powers, and that elves are in their present more similar in nature to the angels, but less in might and stature. So there's kind of like the elves are, I guess, have some characteristics that are similar to angels, but then they have that kind of that immortality issue, mm-hmm. and aren't really. It sounds like they're not really the focus of the story. I guess God's story, ultimate purpose, yeah. Which is kind of sucks for them, I guess, because mm-hmm. Here they are, these more beautiful, almost more spiritual beings. But it's these dirty, filthy humans that are, and I would think they would become very arrogant and bitter about that. Don't you think?
I think some of them did.
If I were an elf, I would be very bitter about those stupid humans. I would not be a very good angel.
No,
actually, I would be a great angel. I'd be a great avenging angel. I'd be the angel of judgment. I would just judge everything. Whether it be consistent with God's judgment or else, I don't know. But it would be without hesitation mm-hmm. or self-doubt or even much self-reflection.
So my question is, why do you need to be an angel to do that? I think that's exactly what you do on this podcast every single time we record.
It would be the platonic ideal of my attitude of judgment.
I see.
A judgment without mercy or consideration.
I see.
Anywho, enough about me. So Gandalf talks about an uncertainty. Mm-hmm. The Gandalf character expresses an uncertainty about his place in the hierarchy of Middle Earth, and that some are more powerful than him. I guess some are not as powerful mm-hmm. as him. And I didn't know that there was some sort of reference to Gandalf being of the same power level and the same type of creation as Sauron.
Mm-hmm. But they are both Maiar.
That is news to me. So Maiar, so Sauron. I thought Sauron was like the son of Morgoth.
Morgoth. He was the servant of Morgoth. So Morgoth was was one of the Valar, and he recruited a bunch of the Maiar to his cause. And
who are the other ones that got recruited? We have names.
So you have Sauron, and you have the Balrogs, especially. So all of the Balrogs are technically like the same beings as Gandalf.
That's the guy with the whip,
with the whip and the sword in the Khazad-dûm. There used to be a whole bunch of them in Middle Earth, and then they were sealed away, or some of them died, or were cast out.
I can see why you would be frightened about mining that deep and awakening a Balrog.
Yes,
because they're terrible creatures.
They're demons. They're literally demons.
Yes.
There's
a new movie out called Nefarious that is a Christian themed book about demonic possession. It's the story is about a guy who's on death row, about to be executed, but they think he's lost his mind, and so they sent a therapist in to prove that he is sane enough for us to execute him, which sounds like something that we would do in the United States, and then things go sideways. It's like some sort of horror movie, but it's written by like a Christian author, I think. He had a novel. So the demon stuff, and then there's another movie out now. They're both in the
Pope's
theaters.
Exorcist?
Yeah, isn't it with Russell Crowe?
I think so. It sounds right.
He's gained some weight, and now he's exorcising demons.
Yes.
On behalf of the Pope.
Thank you for the movie recommendations.
So this is topical.
Yes, it is.
With the demons and the angels and stuff.
It is.
One of the Pope's exorcists, like a guy that has done exorcisms, endorses the Nefarious movie, but not the Pope's exorcist.
Interesting.
I don't know how many of them that are out there that are doing exorcisms.
They're not supposed to tell you. Did you know that? Like, priests aren't supposed to say if they're like qualified to do exorcisms.
I would think that that it would be good for them not to say it.
Yeah. There was one priest at St. Pius that was my high school was heavily rumored to be qualified as an exorcist. Well, I won't say the name. I'm not supposed to tell.
I am familiar with every priest that has been at Pius, and the only one that I think could have done it is no longer with us. But I bet you he could do it, and he would do it with a smile on his face, and he'd probably tell enough jokes to the demon that it would be thrown out. Because I don't think demons can laugh. And there's a reference to, the Gandalf in the book. Like Gandalf turns into Gandalf the White, which is the more powerful, more pure form of the wizards. And there's a long discussion about how after that transition, spiritual really and physical and metaphysical, that his laughter takes such a preeminent role in his character, which brings back to a previous discussion we talked. I think
if
in
Jesus
this,
laughs,
about Jesus laughing, and there's so few references to that, but not like we always everybody talks now about how Jesus loved everybody and he was so nice, but then he's over there MFing people and throwing over their money tables and stuff that one day. I wonder if he cussed, like not blasphemies, but like, what if he insulted those people?
I don't know. I would imagine not, but I don't know.
Why wouldn't he? Well, I mean, like insults being true statements.
True statements, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think he insulted a lot of people by saying true statements. We have a lot of records of that because all the Pharisees were mad at him because he kept insulting them.
Yeah, that is true.
If they were true, I think he would have insulted people.
I think I'm much like Jesus. I just dawned on me. I'm more like Jesus than I thought I was 5 minutes ago.
I hope you enjoyed how much I laughed out loud when you said that you're very much like Jesus.
I shouldn't have said it that way. My second statement is more accurate. I'm more like Jesus than I thought I was 5 minutes ago.
I see.
Which now makes me feel better about myself.
There you go.
I was always feeling guilty for telling people the uncomfortable truths.
Now you just have at it and go for it, I guess.
And I think sometimes guilt is a limitation, like that kind of self-doubt. Because if you feel that and you're doing the right thing, I think a lot of good people don't take action because of that, because they feel guilty because people's feelings get hurt. And especially in today's society, you're so judgmental, as they judge us. But I think that's gonna liberate me a little bit more. Which
there you go.
Anyway, so moving back to the book, I keep going off the topic. And then there's a discussion about how the Gandalf's power. That's what I was talking about. And Gandalf was worried that he, as a Maya, not a Mayan.
Yes, Maya is just the singular of Maiar. So Maiar plural.
He,
Maya
as
is one of them.
a second level angel, may not be powerful enough to defeat the Witch King, a mere man, though undead and energized by Sauron's will. And then there's a reference to Glorfindel, a resurrected elf, who's virtually equal to the Maiar. Who is that? Is that a bad character?
No, he's a very good character. So this is, long story short, so fall of Gondolin, great elf city in the years, many centuries before Lord of the Rings, and he died essentially fighting a Balrog. And I think he ended up killing the Balrog, and he ended up letting a lot of people escape. And I talked last time, there's an idea of elvish reincarnation. They can come back to this world. And so he comes back during the time of the Lord of the Rings, or he's around for several thousand years beforehand, but he's around. He's actually the one, the movies changed this. He's the one that rescues Frodo after he's stabbed by the Witch King, and he's the one who carries him across the river into Rivendell. In the movies, it's Arwen, and I don't mind that change too much. I think it makes sense because she's a bigger character overall than Glorfindel, but he's present in the why is the name slipping me? The Council of Elrond there in Rivendell. He's a major figure there, but then he kind of takes a backseat through the rest of it while the company goes out. But he's a pretty big figure in the beginning of the Fellowship.
I've forgotten about that because it's been so long since I've read it, and I've watched the movie a couple of times. So it's kind of like the book. The differences kind of get evaporated for me because it's been so long since I read the book.
It's interesting. Like it's not even like sure if Tolkien really did that intentionally at first. He might have just liked the name Glorfindel and reused it from earlier, and then he was like, well, it can be the same one,
right?
Because they can reincarnate. He was just because he had not published the early stuff yet.
But he's a resurrected elf. Okay.
Yes.
All right, so I don't know if we have to talk any more about that, but the Ainur, that is what you were talking about as the
broader term.
So that's like that's the rectangle, and the other two are squares.
Yes,
right, because they're a subcategory of the Ainur.
A Maya is an Ainur. I forget what the thing. Ainu is an Ainu. And a Vala is an Ainu, but a Vala is not a Maya.
Okay. then all of them are part of this,
This, yes,
angelic
under the subset,
choir
yes.
that created the world, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So all of them together were part of the choir at the beginning of time and everything.
So
when
even the
formed world.
Maiar,
Yes.
they were singing along in that chorus.
Yes,
They
exactly.
created everything, but they have different roles. And there's discussion about one musician may not be as prominent in the symphony, but
They can only do its task.
They can only do, but they needed the whole symphony to be a symphony.
Yeah.
So even if it's like the little guy in the back, with
'cause
the
I think
triangle.
His example is the piccolo. He's like,
Yes.
a piccolo's not going to be as loud or as bold as a trumpet, but a trumpet cannot do what a piccolo can do, and a piccolo cannot do what a trumpet can do, and they're both necessary for the song overall.
Yeah, I was making a more obvious example of the one dude going ding
Yes. Thank you for that.
with the triangle.
Yes, I see what you're doing there.
Yes. So I don't know if we need to talk about that. I don't think we need to talk about that kind of ranking or that categorization, because he goes into Valar, which Vala. Now it says here, Vala means one having divine power or authority. Is that Tolkien's
Yes,
definition
that's
of
Tolkien's
that?
word.
So because
That's a made-up word.
he
that
created
Tolkien,
that
yes.
word, and that's his definition for the word he created.
Yes.
And they have, in exchange for their authority over creation, because they're in charge of the physical creation of the man world, they undergo a process of self-limitation, which is a necessary consequence of their new position as spatio-temporal beings, meaning they're physical beings. So because they're doing this, they want to take on that role, they kind of self-limited their power voluntarily.
Yeah, because now that they're in the world, they can no longer see what's outside of the world. So they don't have that direct link to like the mind of God anymore, because God's outside of the world. And that's where Manwë comes in, and he talks about that a little bit later. But Manwë is like the head of the Valar, and he's like the direct link in a way between God and the rest of the Valar. Like he's the messenger that they have to go through usually.
He's like the king of the Valar.
Yes.
Right? He's the Manwë, the king.
Yes.
Right.
King, yes. Loose term, but yes.
Okay. And then they have the Valar and the Maiar are different in power, in part due to the concern that they take in the larger or smaller elements of the song that we just talked about. So they have different roles to play. But I still am not really sure even what the real practical difference is between the Valar and the Maiar. I mean, I know the Maiar are supposed to be like lesser angels, I guess, and some less powerful, I guess,
Yeah.
but I don't know why he had to create two of them.
It's not exactly like 100% clear, like, okay, this is what exactly constitutes. It's essentially just how big their role is and how much of an effect they have on the world.
Okay.
So it's like, in the main song, they have, the melody piece, and then all of the other Maiar would be the supporting, chords or something.
Okay.
Like that.
So the Maiar are like the percussionists.
Sure. If you want to look at it like that, I guess. I mean, yeah, sure.
I just insulted all the drummers.
Yeah, you did. One of your sons is a percussionist.
Yes. Well, that's a joke. That's a joke. All right. So there's a discussion of the Maiar, but I don't know that there's really anything else to say other than they have, a lesser degree power, I guess, than the Valar. And then there's the discussion of the purpose and function of these angels. So the angels, like humankind, have a telos, or a purpose.
Yes.
That's I guess a Greek term.
It is a Greek word. It's used
purpose,
in like
an intentional purpose.
Yeah, it's used like in Greek. Telos by itself can just mean if you put it in a sentence like finally or in the end. So if I say,
really?
Yeah, that's like what its use is, and I mean it's used in other things. I mean like the telos, especially like Aristotle used it, like the Greek philosopher, was like the purpose of something as he's using it here. But like telos in just an ordinary sentence was mean finally in ancient
Do you
Greek.
say telos or telos?
Telos? It's an omicron, not an omega.
Tomato.
Nope, not at all actually.
Pajamas?
Nope, not in this case.
Potato. No. All right. So their authority, of course, must follow that of God. So they're derivative. Their power is derivative of God, and their authority only lasts as it is consistent with God, I guess, to a point, because there are some of these Valar and Maiar that became evil because they rejected God. But the angels in the cosmos are its life, and it is their life, like the cosmos, some sort of supernatural creations, right? And then there's a discussion of this Olmo glorifies God through the music of the waters, and Nienna exemplifies God's attribute of mercy and compassion. Am I supposed to know who those people
So
are?
those are just examples of a couple of the Valar, or I think Nienna. Oh no, I'm forgetting if she's a Maya or Vala, but almost like the dude
Angels.
of the waters. Yeah, the
Yes.
angels, almost like the angel of the waters. So he's like Poseidon, if you want to correlate it that way.
Yeah.
And then Nienna, her role is like, I think she's called the Weeper. So she's like a crying spirit in a way. So this idea of compassion and mercy and things like that.
She's kind of like that one girl from Harry Potter that lived
Moaning
in the bathroom.
Myrtle?
Yeah, Moaning Myrtle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you
thank you
go.
for that. Give me the name. 'Cause I
You're
couldn't think of
welcome.
the name. So she was really Nienna. I think there's a lot of overlap between Harry Potter
Well, we've talked
and
about this
Tolkien.
before.
Don't you think?
Any fantasy after Tolkien has borrowed or has been influenced like so
Well,
much.
I mean,
by
it's
Tolkien.
really close.
It
And
is.
a lot
With
of
a lot of
it's
stuff
very
in Harry
very
Potter.
similar. And it's yeah, with like the some of the terms and because like it's kind of setting in a similar type of supernatural good versus evil and story. I think it seems like there's more overlap than
Than not. Yeah.
than I expected. Anyway.
Yes.
So after God creates, gives reality to creation, the angels continue to act as sub-creators, but in a different sense. And then God is still kind of has a plan or a fate, I guess, but they kind of work within that to a certain degree of
Yeah.
independence.
Like in the Silmarillion, one of the first parts there is like, okay, so they make the world, but then you need to like populate it with life. And so he sends all the Valar down, Yavanna, she's like the nature spirit. She makes all the trees, and Ulmo makes like the waters teem with life and stuff like that. So
That sounds like the Indian myth. When they come down like the rope or something, and was there one of those?
oh, that's it's one of the African tales.
Oh,
I think.
African
I
tales,
think
yeah.
one of the
Somebody came
Yoruba
down
legends,
and they made the things in the sea, and they made So yeah,
maybe I'm
it's very
forgetting
similar.
season 2. I'll have to go back and
Yes.
re-listen to some episodes.
I was having a brief flashback.
Yes.
Anyway, so let's see. Oh yeah, then there's a little bit of talk about there. According to Tolkien, for his stories, there's only ever one dominant force on Earth is once. First, it's the angels, the Valar, and they're creating stuff. Then it's the elves, kind of set the stage for the men. And the men are like you're talking about those age, the age of men. The age of angels is passing. The age of men is coming forth, or something like that.
I don't know what you're referencing.
Aren't I quoting
There's one scene
in the movie?
in the movie, but that's
Yes.
an orc. That's Gothmog, the leader of like Sauron's armies or whatever his role is. He's a made up character, but he stabs the guy with the spear, and he says, "The age of men is over. The time of the orc has come."
Yes.
So not men and angels, very different.
Really?
Orcs and men. Is
Am I completely misremembering that?
maybe there's something else that
I
happens
thought
when
Gandalf-
Aragorn is crowned. Yes. So now begins the age of men or something like that.
All right.
But you're thinking the blank of the blank is over. That's
Yes.
what Gothmog says as he stabs the poor
That's
guy
a pretty
laying on the ground.
badass thing to say when you're killing
It's a
somebody.
cool scene.
Yeah, I mean,
They're
really,
all cool scenes.
really trying to kill the guy's spirit right as you're killing him.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all for nothing, man. And out he goes.
Thank you for that.
But we don't, I guess, is there any discussion in the future about orcs? I guess there
Yes,
must be.
there is.
So way
Yeah,
back
he
in
mentions that,
later.
yeah.
Okay, good. Because I'm curious as to what Tolkien really thought about the creation of, fictional characters of the orcs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then just as the elves end up leaving Middle Earth at the end of the Third Age, the angelic powers also recede when their time is done. So, kind of like one passes off and the other ones take over. Any other discussions about that particular topic before we get
mentions-
into their powers?
An interesting point that I kind of like. He says, once men have grown into a sufficient maturity as a people, the Valar step aside and allow the true children of God to shape history. So I think that's also kind of an argument for like, okay, well, why isn't God, 100% active in every single facet of life? 'Cause
Right.
He doesn't need to be. Now that's our job to sort of shape the world in a way,
Right.
according to his plan.
Right. That's a good theory. Yeah. I guess it's our responsibility is not going to take as active a role once he kind of gets the ball in motion. It makes a lot more theological sense after Jesus comes and the word is spoken, and then so it's kind of like you're on notice, either do the right thing or not.
Another interesting point. I think this is where we get into free will a little bit later, but I'll just bring it up now.
Yeah.
Is this idea of like they were much more active in the earlier years because they cannot change the past, and so when you can work ahead and you can shape the future, and so you have 6,000 years of future to go. But then once you get to year 4,000, there's only so much you can do to shape those remaining 2,000 because everything's already set in motion from the 4,000 years prior. So there's just not much else you can physically do to shape the course of the world. Which is an interesting idea, and I've never really thought about it like that, as if they're kind of constrained to one point once they make their decisions earlier on.
They got to funnel it down.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, the powers, angel powers. They're limited. They're not like divine creatures in the sense that they have their own unlimited power. It's all derived from God. They're not omniscient. Their knowledge is derived from God. These fictional characters that Tolkien has created. But they certainly seem to know a lot.
Yeah.
And then, but they can't see everything. So even Manwë and Morgoth, they both need messengers and scouts and all that stuff, which always kind of struck me as odd. That these things are so powerful, and they can, figure out the future and know all the past and all this stuff, but they still need somebody to go out and they tell me where that army is. I guess they have. I don't know. So I guess it's a. I always thought it was a plot device. But any thoughts about the power and the limited powers of the angels?
I mean, I think
and their discussion of time. They can't stop time and. I don't know what else you want to talk about.
He has another point in here, I think, later when he's talking about them becoming like physical beings.
Million and the wizards taking up physical bodies, and therefore they have the limitations thereof. And is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but he also makes a point. I can't remember if this is here or later, but he makes the point that because they're physical in the world and they can actually affect things, in some ways they're more powerful, like physically than they are just spiritually if they're existing outside of the world. It's like sort of a give and take. Like you can't do everything and you can't communicate directly with God anymore, but you can actually more directly shape the events of the world. So it's an interesting sort of trade-off idea that's sort of present there.
Yes, that is in this section, but not the beginning where I was talking about it. And then there's a discussion of language, which I'm sure you were interested in as far as angelic languages, I guess, and no angel has a name, like a true name. They just have like pseudonyms or nicknames based upon whatever their primary attributes or their known attributes are. What are your thoughts about the angel names and language and such?
Well, I think his point about language is very, very cool because they don't need like actual physical speech, right? Yeah. Because they're spiritual beings.
They're telepaths.
And the interesting point is when he brings up when angels are talking to men. He says it's like a reversal of how language ordinarily works because we hear like abstract noises and we interpret meaning from them. But he says if an angel's talking directly to you, you just immediately perceive the meaning and then you try to represent it for yourself in these symbols that we have called language. It's just crazy to think about, which is because it's the complete opposite of how everything works within our brain. But I guess it would make sense in a way. That logic follows. If they just transmit meaning because they don't need words, that would be how it would work.
Well, when I read that in the book, I thought, you know what? I bet you he did have some sort of guardian angel, experience because how else would you? I mean, how else would it happen other than they would just give you, the idea, the concept, and then you have to articulate. You have to put it into language just for yourself to really fully understand it. Either that or an alien.
Yeah, sure. two good examples there.
Like alien abduction. Like where they telepathically communicate with you. Not like what's her face, Lieutenant what's her face from Star Trek. Not like just know your feelings, but actually know your thoughts. Yes. Like her mother, I think, was a telepath.
I see.
So from the Star Trek: The Next Generation, I'm forgetting her name.
I don't know. I haven't seen too many episodes of Star Trek. Unfortunately,
I have seen them all at least 3 times. All right. So what else do we want to talk about in that section? I think that
move on
covers
to freedom
a lot.
and sin.
Yes, angelic freedom and sin. Are they free? Can they sin? Answers to both is evidently yes. But it seems like from what the author's describing Tolkien's writings is that most of the certainly the angels have freedom, but most of the bad things that they do or the bad things that have bad outcomes are more mistakes rather than intentionally bad, except for, of course, Morgoth and his followers who just reject God's plan and try to fight against it. But even the was it a dude? Even the angel who created the dwarves kind of surreptitiously was not condemned for it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a mistake. But then the guy's like, "Oh, those are pretty cool things." So I guess
Exactly.
I guess I'll give him souls or
That's
whatever.
word
he
for
did.
word what Tolkien wrote.
Yeah, it's kind of like, all right,
Yes.
yeah, kind of disappointed, but it's not necessarily a sin. What are your thoughts about the free will and sins of the angels?
I like that point because once they become physical beings, it's kind of like the Jesus thing. He was like physically a guy, and so he would have his own sort of personality traits in a way.
Yes.
And so that's kind of what you're seeing with the Valar here becoming physical. Manway's problem is what he says is he becomes virtually obsessed with maintaining the status quo because he
Right.
thinks that he knows everything about God's plan, so everything needs to stay the exact same as it is so that it can progress according to his belief of God's plan. It's not really like he's not sinning against God. He's just misunderstanding what exactly the plan is and is sort of affecting things in that way, which is an interesting idea. I like that idea.
And he kind of describes most of like the bad things were really that when they're disassociating themselves from actively playing a role and doing anything, rather than just kind of like thinking about how many Valar are on the head of a pin. It's a reference to how many. Have you ever heard that?
I've heard the saying. I don't know what it's
the
from.
saying of you just sit in a room considering how many angels are ahead of a pin. There used to be long debates. I don't know if it lasted years or decades or hundreds of years, where they debate how many angels. What's the physical
It's the
characteristics
size of an angel. Yeah.
Yeah, what's the size? How
interesting.
many angels can you fit on the head of a pin?
Interesting.
The answer is 3.
Is it?
No.
Why is that?
It's just being stupid.
Yes.
Of course, it's 4. So I mean, big discussion between and a differentiation between those. What I said, like the mistakes and sins, which goes back to a lot of moral theory. What's most important is not the outcome, but the intention. And I think that's overlap with a lot of the criminal law, and I think a lot of people, but not everybody, understand there is a difference between intentional bad acts and then unforeseen or unexpected bad outcomes, which is really in the modern day most common argument when you talk about disparity of outcome, like with discrimination. You say, well, there's there's a like a certain demographic group has less money, let's just say, than a different demographic group. So there must be something evil happening. Well, it may just be a series of a whole bunch of different decisions and things. It's maybe not an evil problem. Maybe it's just we have to figure out what is causing it and then do something different, as opposed to, well, there's some nefarious actions going on or some sort of conspiracy.
Yeah,
so it seems like Tolkien recognizes, especially with the angelic figures, that what's most important is their intent and their purpose. Are they following God's purpose? Are they trying to do the right thing as opposed to making mistakes?
Interesting sort of double standard, I think, kind of what you're going on with, like, intention and society's fault. It's like anytime, at least from what I've seen, when a lot of the time when people do something wrong, they tend to blame it on society, right? It's like, it's society's fault that I did this. This is what shaped me, and this is who I am. Blah 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 blah.
Right.
But then if something happens to like a group of people at large, it's no longer like societal factors. It's this group of people did this to this group of people. And it's their exact fault.
Right.
And that's what you see, I think, time and time again with a lot of this stuff. It's like applied at large. It's one specific group's fault, but applied to me directly, it's everything else's fault as a collective.
Yeah, it's cheap moralizing because you don't have any personal responsibility for the bad things you do. And you also don't have any personal responsibility for the things that you have failed to do, because the bad things you did are the fault of everybody else. The bad things that have occurred to you are because of everybody else, not because you won't get up out of bed until after 1 p.m. And you're smoking pot all day in U City when they shut down the street, so I can't go to Vintage Vinyl.
That's great. I'm glad you're holding a grudge.
Yes. That's just the bad things are going to flow from all that excessive marijuana use. And it's a drug, man. It's not a placebo.
Yes.
There's stuff going on there that's not going to all be good. No, but man, you can make a rope, and it cures my anxiety, and this cancer patients helps with their appetite. So
can we move on
eat.
to incarnate angels?
So that's really why we like it. It has nothing to do with the fact that it just gets me high all day. There's a lot more commentary though about the paranoid schizophrenia, the paranoia that and we're going to see it in 10 years. 10 years time, we're going to have all these people that are like 18 to 25 that are smoking all the pot all every day, and 10 years from now, hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully it's benign and everybody will be okay and they'll be happy potheads 10 years from now. But I suspect there'll be a lot of people really suffering in 10 years.
It's a good thing that weed is a constitutional right in the Missouri Constitution.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Anyway, let's move on to incarnate angels.
Incarnate angels. So those are the angels that are physical.
Yes.
We kind of already alluded to a lot of this. What else do you want to talk about? The fact that when they become physical, their powers are limited. Mm-hmm. But, of course, they have more power over the physical world because they're physical.
Yes, exactly.
And what else do you want to talk about in that subject?
I mean, I like the beginning, just to talk about my Greek knowledge. First, the wizards as angels, and specifically guardian angels, using the Greek term angelos. And what that means in ancient Greek is just messenger. That word is just used to refer to messengers of any kind, not even like angels themselves. But if a king sends a messenger, you use the term angelos, and of course that's where we get the term angel. And that's exactly what the wizards are. The Astari, they're the messengers from Eru into the physical world in this late stage to sort of influence things in the right direction and get people moving again, which is an interesting idea.
Yes.
I also wanted to, let's see if we could touch on the Saruman the White and Gandalf the White idea, if I can find where
Gandalf the Gray turning into Gandalf the White. That he changes. He basically changes his veil and how they're kind of in their physical being. They're kind of hidden. Their true nature is kind of hidden, and they're perceived as kind of almost infirm or just as wise old weak beings. Especially Gandalf the Grey, because they can't really be fully perceived in their pure form, it'd be frightening. Like when he's fighting off those Nazgul, he has the bright light that scares him off, and then when he first gets reincarnated, so to speak, or he's Gandalf the White, he doesn't even remember his name, and then but until he reconnects with his buddies. So I thought those were kind of interesting concepts, plot devices, or whatever you want to say. That this kind of reincarnation, or there's this physical beings that they have, and their powers. They purposely limit them to just try to guide people to the one true way.
Yeah, there's an interesting. This isn't in the book. This is just drawing on my own Tolkien knowledge. But there's the idea of color we kind of alluded to earlier is really interesting because white, as we know it, is like all of the color wavelengths in one. Yes. That's why if you have a prism, it breaks into many colors. Since it's the leader of the order is white, not because it's necessarily the holy color, but it's all of the colors in one. When Saruman turns evil, essentially, is corrupted by the ring and by Sauron. This is in the books, it's not in the movies, but he gives himself a new cloak. He calls himself Saruman of many colors, and it's like a big, essentially like tie-dye sort of, translucent or something cloak. And he reveals himself to Gandalf, and I am now superior, I have all the colors within me. And so sort of the idea of Gandalf coming back as Gandalf the White is because Saruman essentially gave up his purpose. He is no longer all the colors. He is broken. That's what happens when you break light into the many colors. He has essentially broken his own purpose, and Gandalf has come back, unifying all of those colors together once more into white light.
So really, it's evil to have the rainbow as your cloak or your flag, so to speak. So you're saying the rainbow flag is really displaying that you're broken spiritually. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's exactly
that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
okay, I just want to make sure that we're clear that Tolkien and you are espousing the view that if you fly a rainbow flag, that you are broken spiritually, right?
That means the French must be very whole spiritually. They're always flying the white flag.
Oh,
surrender choke.
Cheese-eating surrender monkeys. That's from The Simpsons. It's not from me.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we talked about the laughter. We talked about Gandalf coming back. Is there anything else you want to talk about on Gandalf? Because that was like what the last few passages were here. We're about
so we kind of took them out of order. But so what are your thoughts about the author's thoughts about Tolkien's thoughts about angels? And then what are your thoughts about angels?
Well, I've never really given angels much thought. I think much like you, I'm just like, okay, yeah, I guess I believe that things exist. And I think it's part of the fault of it is like, you know, all of the artwork of angels. You know, sometimes you have really beautiful angels and they're like real, or like Saint Michael, you know, killing Satan. But a lot of the times when you hear angel, it's like the kindergarten class little chubby baby with wings. And I feel like we've kind of diminished the idea of angel over time to be like this little, you know, the devil and the angel on the shoulder. But it's really something a lot more than that, you know, if we're really talking about it in terms of what they actually are as like, you know, personifications of God's attention. You know, that's something much bigger than can be represented in paintings. I don't know. What do you think?
About angels?
Yes.
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. You know, I'm reminded of like the Looney Tunes cartoons where you know, there's like a little guardian angel on one shoulder and a little
that's what I was saying.
Satan on the other shoulder. Yeah. And there's also a reference in Animal House, which if you've ever seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's hard to, I don't know, it almost seems foolish to some reason that, you know, especially in today's society, I believe that angels exist.
Well, there's so much of a denial of any sort of spiritual world at all.
True. But it's also, it kind of, you know, what role do they play? You know, and have I had an experience? I can't say I have had an experience, but maybe I've had an experience. I didn't realize it. Or maybe, you know, it's one of those things kind of like you can't prove it one way or the other. And I just haven't given it much thought, quite frankly. You wrestle with all these other thoughts, like about free will and sin and God and heaven and hell. But you know, of course, there's an argument about does Satan exist, and why does God let Satan exist, so to speak? And there's all sorts of different versions or theories about what Satan really is. Is Satan really just doing a service, you know, for God in a sense, a necessary service, or is he really trying to fight God? I mean, without Satan, do you really have morality? You know, if without the choice to do evil, are you really a good person? You know, so it's all tied up in that, and I don't know. I really don't know. I'll have to. This is gonna spur me to think about, you know, angels, their existence. And obviously, it's throughout the whole Bible. You know, Old Testament, New Testament. I mean, it's, you know. The Hail Mary is words from, was it Gabriel that came out and told Mary, you know, you're a child, that type of thing, you know, or talked to her about it. So, I mean, you know, it's all through the angels, you know, meeting Jesus, that kind of stuff, and the apostles, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's throughout the Bible, so why wouldn't I believe it?
That point about, you know, without Satan would there be morality, I think that's a perfect example of what Tolkien would call that eucatastrophe.
Yes.
Right, of course, God did not want Satan to tempt Adam and Eve in the garden. He wanted them to live in peace in the garden because they were his creation, you know, forever, presumably, because they weren't going to die and things like that. But then Satan comes along and tempts them away from God. And then, like what you're saying, now we do have a concept of morality. And, you know, God turned it into something that can be used for good, and that people now have the choice to choose him, essentially, which is an interesting idea. I think that's exactly what Tolkien would call a eucatastrophe. But we'll talk about the fall in later chapters.
Yeah, and it's like, I guess, you know, the difference between us and our dogs. I think they have a self-awareness. They have awareness of who we are and what we're doing. And they seem to have a sense of right or wrong or whatever they're going to get reprimanded for or that type of thing. But otherwise, they're just pure of spirit. Yeah, you know, that I don't think our dogs could commit a sin. Yeah, you know, I think they might make a mistake. You know, if they bit somebody, be making a mistake. It's not like they would just hurt somebody, you know, intentionally or do something bad. And so, you know, without that knowledge or that ability to choose to do bad, you're in a sense a lesser creature, although maybe more pure. Yeah, you know, oddly enough. And so yeah, it gets into, you know, how do you have morality, and then, you know, the angel thing is kind of hard to articulate, you know, the purpose behind it and why and why aren't they here now? You know, why aren't we seeing angels from time to time? Maybe we are seeing angels. I mean, you know, so there are people. I mean, there are a lot of people that believe in angels, but they won't talk about it. You know, like I'm at lunch at Rotary. You aren't gonna have somebody say, "Hey, I had a visit from my guardian angel last night," because we don't look at them like they're crazy. So I think if you had an experience, you probably wouldn't talk about it. You maybe think it's like some sort of psychotic break. Even if it was benign, even if it was good. So I don't know. That's a
I think
long
the
way to
solution
say.
is just to talk about angels more often.
It may be.
I think it's part of me. I think does think that we should bring back more of an idea of the spiritual world into conversation, because it's just not talked about. A lot of politicians would be like, "Well, I have God on my side," and blah blah. Blah. That's about as close as you get to somebody like practically putting God into any sort of policy or into any sort of focus. You don't actually see anybody talking about theology or like the spiritual world.
And that withdrawal has been good in the sense that nobody's forcing their religious views on anybody else, but has been horrible because we all need to have religion, and we all are going to have religion in our life one way or the other, and we're going to have religious beliefs in society. And with the Christians and the Jews and any other really devout religion in the United States pulling back and retreating and only talking about it quietly among themselves, the void is being filled with communism and socialism and transgenderism, all that stuff, because it's just obviously just a religious view. And then finally it's becoming more commonly known that that's a religion.
Yeah.
I think I'm hearing it a lot more in mainstream, and I think there's no harm really in talking about it a little bit more. And quite frankly, if I ever do talk about religion, which is publicly or with a group or small group, it's funny how receptive people are immediately to want to talk about it, because there's like a thirst there, because people don't ever want to talk about it. That has to be in the right context, but yeah, maybe that is a solution. Maybe just be more aware of it.
Maybe
you can't be aware of it unless you're talking about it. That goes to your language theory. If society's not writing or thinking about it,
controls the language, and that controls every conversation.
Right.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Do you have any other closing thoughts, or should we wind things down?
No, I think we just need the whole point of this whole episode should be that I am more like Jesus than I thought I was.
It's ridiculous. Austin Freeman, if you've been listening, I'm sorry. That's what I have to say.
Don't apologize for me. You don't have to apologize for me. I am actually I'm not offended now. But if anybody apologizes for me, that's one of the fastest way to make me angry.
Yes, I'm aware.
You're aware of that?
You have mentioned that many times.
Have I?
Yes.
Good. Never apologize for me.
I'll keep that in mind.
Yes. You don't have a right to.
Yes.
It's not yours to apologize. You don't own me.
All right. This has been Season 5, Episode 6 of Unlimited Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
I'm still Mark Bishop.
I wonder if he is actually listening to these episodes.
What are you talking about, Guardian Angel or Jesus?
Austin Freeman.
Oh,
Jesus! I don't think he's sitting here listening to Unlimited Opinions up in heaven.
I think he is. You don't think he is?
Well, I guess he listens to everybody.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's putting his headphones on. Time for the weekly episode of Mark and Adam Bishop on Unlimited Opinions.
He will not need the headphones, Adam. Come on, that's just embarrassing.
He's got a nice surround sound system.
That's right. He's got his own theater.
Yeah, exactly.